Sanneman with business success tips where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors find great teams and build great teams. So, Chris Buttenham, who is the co founder of Reins. So, Chris, a little about your backstory. What do you do and what does Reins do?
Yeah, for sure. Best way to describe me is I'm an entrepreneur. This Reigns is my second act. I founded a software company previous to Reigns, and then decided I wanted to help small business owners, namely contractors and folks in the trades. It's actually where I started my career. My dad has a commercial service business, and I worked with him on the trucks for 5 years after college, and
Mhm.
I found myself back in this industry just from a different angle. And so what Reigns does is we help those types of businesses incentivize their key employees through equity and profit sharing programs. And we do that uniquely through a framework that we built that kind of takes the traditional complexity and costs out of what people typically think of when they think of phantom stock or profit sharing plans. And then we have software that layers on top of that that makes it really easy to customize the programs, implement it with the employees, and then manage it and help them communicate those programs over time with the employees. So when you think about doing this historically, you get a piece of paper from an attorney, a
Historically,
really
you've got way too
expensive.
many Excel spreadsheets to make it
That's
work.
right. That's right. You've got Excel spreadsheets and you got some expensive paper from an attorney, and that's kind of where you're left. But what Reigns does is it turns it into a living, breathing incentive program.
So I know everybody thinks incentives are a great idea, but the implementation is usually hard. I mean, for example, you say, okay, well, I'm willing to give my HVAC tech 20% of the profit, everything over this amount of money that he makes in a single call, and so much per call. And the whole compensation is very confusing because
Yes.
one place the employee doesn't understand it. And if they don't understand it, it's not going to change their behavior. And
Right.
the owner doesn't understand it because he's not figuring out exactly what he's paying for. And he goes, I just paid John Doe another 900 bucks. What the heck was that for? Right?
Right. Yeah. Actually, on that note, let's define a couple of terms, right? So a lot of folks will call an incentive, well, they'll call a bonus an incentive. So what we see often is there's a lot of bonuses, a lot of performance pay. And to your point, is it's often rooted in some, performance condition they've done, but it becomes an entitlement. And it becomes an entitlement for a couple of reasons. One, the tax or whomever it is expects it to happen without any behavioral change. And the other point that you mentioned is they don't understand how it works. So when they don't get it, or they continue to receive it, they actually don't know that what they did influenced it or not. Right. And
Well,
so,
I'm going to give you a bad example, but it's sort
yeah,
of, I've
please.
been coaching a long time. Let's say you give everybody turkey for Thanksgiving or whatever, or you give people $1,000 bonus at Christmas. All of a sudden, the company's not making any money, right? And you said, okay, we're going to skip the turkey for Christmas. I mean, for Thanksgiving, and we're skipping the $1,000 bonus because we lost money last year. I don't think anybody cares. They're always pissed off. They go, look at where is my turkey? I counted on my turkey,
That's
right?
right.
Where's
That's
my
right.
$1,000 bonus? They consider
Yeah,
it part of their compensation, and
exactly.
they get upset when they don't get it.
Exactly. And so we don't actually don't touch that. What we do is supplementary to that. We create incentive plans that are sort of somewhere between the mid to long term, in terms of timing. Call it like a quarterly profit share. And if and only if our, company hits our profit margin goal, and then we layer on an equity incentive. So stick with the company long term, meet these performance conditions, and you'll actually get a stake in the sale if we choose to sell the business in a few years.
Now, that's sort of scary to me as an owner because I go, I've never
Yeah.
done well with partners. I mean, all my experience with partners has never worked out well.
Yeah.
So I'm a little paranoid of anything that gives anybody equity, right? Because I'm going,
Yeah.
whoa, I'm going to get a minority shareholder suit because I didn't buy him a new truck last year or whatever, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so how do you deal with those issues and give me specific compensation, pick a roofing company or somebody you work with and what you did for them and what it actually works like in real terms.
Yeah, that's a good way to understand this. So for the first question, that's part of why we needed to design our own framework. So take a quick step back. We work with some of the best compensation attorneys in the country to create basically a set of guardrails that we thought owners in the home service industry, the contractors, um, wanted. And a few of those things in our framework are when you grant these awards, they do not give voting rights. They do not give information or financial rights. They are not actually securities, they're not equity. They just give the right to the benefit of that type of incentive
Like
when
a
the
stock
business
option
sells.
plan kind of thing, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's formerly known as a sort of phantom stock plan. Um, and so it doesn't have the traditional headaches you would have when you actually bring in a partner or someone who's buying into the business. So all of the benefits of equity ownership, aligning the employees with the long-term goals of the business without any of the headaches. So that's first and foremost. And that I think will come into light when I give you the example. So let's think here. So one of my customers, I don't want to share their name because I don't,
And then just
it,
say ABC company. That's fine.
yeah, sensitive. It's a um, plumbing and HVAC company in Colorado. And they came to us um, first to put together, we call it, our framework is called MARE, Modern Agreement for Awards and Equity. So our long-term incentive is called MARE stock. So he wanted to put together a MARE stock plan for his GM. That was what he came in looking to do. And it was uh, several percentage points of the business. It vests over 5 years, and that GM will get paid if a performance condition has been met, so a certain revenue goal, if I'm not mistaken, and or if the company sells, he's been employed throughout that tenure, he will get that percentage that he was granted in cash when the business sells. Now, along the way, he's also getting profits, and that's through our mayor profit plan. And so he will get an equal percentage of the profits as he vests into it over that tenure. Once we set that up, though, the owner got really excited and he actually started granting it to all of his managers. So all of his
How big a company
trades
is
managers.
it? 10 million, 2 million, 5 million?
It's a $15 million company,
Okay.
about 100 employees.
Okay.
Um, so then he did it for all of his managers, and he put together a similar, but a little less liberal sort of plan for all the managers, and they're sharing in a profit pool. And so he's got goals for 2025, and so he says, and I'll make up the numbers, but say oh, our goal is to hit 18% net margin for each quarter. So he will pay a percentage of profits if quarterly if 18% net margin is met, and he'll share X percentage over the threshold with all of his management team. And now he's in the process of rolling that program out to the technicians as well.
Okay. So how big a company do you have to make this make any kind of sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. It definitely doesn't work for the chuck in a truck, like one or two people as employees. But certainly we've seen it work for anyone north of 10. We do have a couple of customers within the 5 to 10 range. I call those customers really proactive. There's certainly no reason you can't or shouldn't. You're thinking ahead and thinking about long-term retention of those employees, those early employees. So nothing wrong with starting it that soon, but it certainly starts to get to a point where it's a real palpable need after 10 employees. 10 employees, call it anywhere from 3 to 5 million in revenue.
Okay. And what why would you want to do this? What's the incentive for the owner?
Yeah, so if done correctly, and this is the difference between a bonus and an incentive plan, is that it's meant to be a win-win. These anything that we enable you to do, and we're a technology company, so really what we're doing is we're enabling these businesses and these owners to do it really simply. We're not an incentive consulting firm, though we do obviously help and handhold our customers. Um, but what they're trying to accomplish when they set up these plans is one of two things. One, they're trying to grow. And so they're trying to align the business goals with the financial incentives in the business. And they're trying to retain. And retain is like kind of two buckets. It's, I want to retain the employees I have, or I want to make a sweet offer to a strategic employee I'm bringing on. So those are sort of
So
the
it's sort of
two
like
main
what's in it
reasons.
for me, right?
Right. Exactly. And everything we do is performance based. There's conditions. These are not entitlements or handouts.
So how would the benefit of this differ from a bonus plan, and what would be the difference?
Well, for all the reasons we were talking about before, right? If you're using the sort of Christmas bonus, right? You get the Christmas effect. People just change their behavior in December, and people are expecting it to happen. So actually, you're not really doing anything to change the behavior of the team. But if you say, look, when communicated correctly, if our goal is as a company 15% net profit margin for the year, you're all going to get paid for anything, call it 25% over that 15% net margin. And here's what you can do individually to contribute to that number. That's a win-win.
So
The
show
business
me,
hits their
what are
goal.
some of the times things you've done this before? What kind of things can they do to contribute to that number? Use a client, don't give them the name, but just what did he tell the employees they need to do to contribute to that number?
Yeah, good question. So baseline is communicate and we help with this. How does profit work at our business, right? How does it, do I understand a simple financial statement? Do I think that as an employee, without even asking them, a lot of employees think that 50% of revenue is going to go into the pockets of the owner. And then they're surprised when
That would be
it's pretty
nice.
thin, right?
Right.
Exactly. But that is the common misconception. So first and foremost, it's understanding how these things actually work. But then when you look under the hood and, if we look at home services, right? There's a lot of things that folks can do to drive whatever is important for the business. We've been talking about net profit, but it could be anything. In home services, membership sold, reduction in callbacks, um, uh, average sale size, upsells, closing rate, booking rate.
But those are normally connected to bonuses. Why is
They
this
can
different?
be. They can be, but these are conditions that ultimately roll up into some overarching financial metric for the business. And so what you're doing is you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're saying to the employee, these things actually roll up into your share of the company's profits because these things actually contribute to our bottom line, our top
Okay,
line.
so give me an example of somebody before and after, and how have you actually seen this work?
Well, we see all kinds of different permutations. Obviously, on one hand, they're not doing anything. And on the other hand, they're doing it, but it's more of an entitlement. Maybe let's just say it's done really well, but it's done off the back of a spreadsheet. And it's a handshake with the employee. Well, the employee has no faith that this is going to get paid. They have no idea how it actually works. The owner is super excited because they created a really complicated Excel formula. Um, and it then becomes very difficult for them to manage. So obviously, the technology makes all of that simple and then communicates it effectively to the employees, which then makes the whole program effective. It actually helps them hit the thing that they intended to hit when they design the program. So some of it's cleaning it up, some of it is formalizing it, and some of it is actually taking it from what was an entitlement um, and turning it into a real incentive plan.
So when you're trying to change behavior of the employees, which is the purpose of this whole plan, how often do you give feedback to them? Is it daily, weekly, annually? because my experience is unless you do it pretty often, you're not going to change your behavior. Because normally, I'm going to call it the event horizon. Most employees don't look at the end of the year; they look at the end of the week or the end of. I mean, they're not like just my experience in the trades. They're not like like 401k. That's really nice, but what does it really mean to me, right? So, um, how often do you give them feedback, and how have you seen it actually affect things?
Yeah, it depends on the plan. It depends on the cadence in which the business currently communicates to employees. And I'll be the first to say, I don't really like talking about reins. Like these are all tips and tools that you can use regardless of reins. Incentive plans work, period. Um, um, but this is not going to replace good culture and communication within an organization. So you have to have that, right? And so for a lot of our plans that are quarterly, what we will say is if you have a monthly meeting or if you have a bi-weekly meeting, update your financial milestones on that cadence and communicate progress towards it with employees. And that is one of the benefits of using technology to deliver a program like this, is that obviously we can do that
So
at
let's say you're
scale.
meeting with your management staff every 2 weeks. That's typical,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And you can say we're shooting for a 20% net profit
Hmm.
this quarter.
Hmm.
Anything over 20%, we're going to share, half with you and half with them, right? Just a typical thing.
Yeah,
So how do I communicate that to my meetings? Like we're ahead, we're behind. I mean, because first I have to have financials that I keep in every couple of weeks or I won't even know, right?
correct. Yeah,
So I have
correct.
to
Yeah,
I have to be in track of the numbers. And then once I know the numbers, I can see how that's going to affect the company and say, look at, in the last 2 weeks, our jobs average, 32% net or 10% net or whatever.
yeah,
So I can get back to them and say, look at we're ahead or behind and why, right?
exactly. And explain to them how that works because they probably hadn't thought about it before. You're
Right.
just sort of like saber rattling and saying like, oh, we need to get our net up, but they don't actually understand how their actions contribute to that. So this does create a good excuse to talk about it and tie it
So,
together.
so we can say our callbacks are costing us 3% or whatever it's costing us. Our warranties, which we make good money on, are down by 10%. And our labor, which we're calculating at 30%, is at 35% because you guys are taking too long to do the jobs. Is that something that you could
Exactly. Exactly. And what happens is when if you incorporate the technology into something like this, you could actually show them how that affects their number. To your point, right? We're sometimes we're short-sighted and there's a few things that really matter. Money is one of them. And so if they can see their number and how that's affected based on some of these actions, that's going to really solidify the cultural aspect.
So you would say, for example, unless we can cut down the callbacks, increase the warranty sales, we're obviously going to not make this quarter and you guys aren't going to get your bonus.
Right.
Or we need to decrease our labor cost because we have a 20% allocation for labor. It's a 25% because you take too long to do the jobs. You can even say, you can list all the employees and say, look at Joe's taking 30% over. If you've got good numbers, you can say that. Mike's right on track. John's right on
Yeah,
track. But now there is sort of the team effect because if they're in the pool together,
exactly.
John's behavior is going to hurt your bonus because he's going over on labor and you're not.
But the opposite of that, which is a lot of bonus plans, is that it can be a little parasitic because you're really only incentivized to help you. When you're in a pool, you're incentivized to help the team. And we definitely want to promote the rising tide lifts all boats scenario because that's the truth. That's how, like, historically, the
So,
data
so
suggests
you
these
find
things
out,
work.
so you're finding out that there's peer pressure in a sense that because John is always way over on his labor, we needed to get rid of John or inspire John because he's killing us all.
Yeah, I mean, extreme examples, but yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. We're more incentivized to help out each other reach the collective goal when we're
But
in the
it's
pool
still, if you
together.
got the numbers, it's going to come because there's always the top 10% and the top bottom in anything, right?
Sure, for sure.
And
But
it's
rising
not
tide
like,
lifts all boats.
so the point is you've got to get rid of the bottom 10% or do something with it and then inspire the rest of them to make the goals. The minute
Right.
you have, I mean, you've got two guys on a truck, no, but if you have 15 people on your team, it makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, I mean, this makes sense to me. I can understand it's very complicated for a lot of people to figure out, and obviously that's what you're doing.
Correct.
So you're saying any company that has, I'm giving it more than 10 employees and is doing more than a couple million a year, something like this might make sense for them.
Exactly. And the benefit of doing it sooner is that it's less complicated.
Right.
And because the complexity really comes with expectations. It's, well, I've done this plan and there's expectations that I'm going to continue to do it this way.
Right.
Or I want to do it this certain way because of X, Y, and Z. When you start early, you really set a solid foundation. It's
Well,
built into the culture.
I use the example, resurrection is harder than birth. You know what I mean?
That's a
Because
good, that's a good analogy. That's right. That's
because
right.
you're trying to go, well, I know we've had this plan for 8 years. You've all got paid for it. We're going to can the whole plan and start a new one. They go, no, 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 no. You know, I remember last year I got an extra 8,000 bucks. I don't want that to go
Right.
away, right? Come on.
Right. Right.
And but if you don't have a plan or you've got one not this, that you don't have to kill so the new one, you're gonna have much less resistance on the part of the employees, I assume.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, cool. So, Chris, if people want to get a hold of you and just think, and I assume they can have some kind of discovery call that says, does this make sense or not for them?
Yeah, of course. You just go to myreins.com. There's a lot of great free resources on the website. One thing we're doing right now is we'll do a free like incentive plan audit. So just as you described, right, Paul, there's a lot of existing things that people are doing. So we will take a look under the hood, see what they're currently doing, and we will, for free, no strings attached, identify if there are any gaps, get whether or not they become a Reins customer. So that's a good way to get started, and you can just book a call with us to do that on our website.
So if you either have an incentive plan or you're considering getting an incentive plan, you'd be a good person to call, right?
I think so. I think so. Happy to
Okay.
help.
Okay, Chris. Well, again, one more time with the website, Chris, so that people know.
Yep, it's myreins.com, REINS.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here. Anybody listening to this podcast, if you have an incentive plan or thinking about getting one, I would definitely get a hold of Chris because you don't want to do the wrong one for sure.
Thanks, Paul.